All right, week 2 in the closet. Now, this was a weekly podcast, but you're a hard man to hunt down. So this will be a somewhat weekly podcast. It is Sunday afternoon at 4:38.
I like it.
The witching hour. There's one more sermon to go. A morning full of conversations. We've been in this conversation series for the last 3 weeks, Creator and Creation, looking at just the first couple chapters, first couple verses of Genesis, really. And there's so much foundational stuff here. And we've kind of seen, it feels like every 15 minutes there's all kinds of, I don't know what word you'd use, kind of pulses throughout society, right? Charlie Kirk recently died. Just today, there was a church shooting. You hear stories of revival. There's political stories. There are all kinds of things that can just, for better, for worse, cause all kinds of reactions in us. And I heard you say today that we got to be careful where we're rooted, what we're rooting things in. How do you see this series? Because for some people, it might feel like there's real things going on in the world, and you're talking about creation, Genesis. How do you see what we've been talking about in Creator and Creation kind of inseparable from the way that we see the realities going on in our world, or the realities going on in our personal world? People walking through divorce, walking through heartbreak, walking through moral questions, life decisions. How do you see what we're doing in this series as foundational to all those things?
Well, I mean, we kind of kidded about it that we spent 3 weeks in the beginning of the story. And so first thing I'd say is when it comes to the story of God, we're there on purpose because there are so many things that tease out from the very beginning. But the truth is, we live our life, and we used the illustration this morning. It's like being dropped on a stage. Yeah. We're reading from a script. And when life's going along fine, many times you can read from your script, I read from my script. We kind of just
don't think about it, don't worry about
it.
Yeah.
But when something happens and there's this passion, ambition, or reaction, if there's not a story that I find myself in, I can find my reactions going really quick off the rails, and I expect your reaction. I expect you're reading off the same script as my script.
Yeah.
And so if you're not, then I'm going to become reactive to the script you're reading off. And I believe the importance of this series. And so I think there's a lot of great reactions and enthusiasm. And, I would say some of these things you just mentioned, I love the fact, like I had a young man say to me, I'm thinking about my life different. I don't want to waste my life. I want to make my life count. And I said, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now let's make sure our life is rooted in the story of God. Yeah. And I can't root my life in something I don't know.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're spending a year in it, because it's like I can root my life in issues I think are about God, or I can root my life in things I've been told about God. But he's writing the story, and when we get there, all of a sudden the script, it's like, oh, he's the playwright, and there's actually a story that he's writing. And I think what it does, it becomes a govern for some of our responses and even how we respond to and with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not just an emotionally charged, not rooted in anything, ambition because something happened, but it's like none of the events you mentioned have taken God by surprise. Like, as sad and as much of a catastrophe as there are, none of them, and the story of God is still the story of God, and he's writing it. We are living in that story right now. And so when I find myself rooted in there, I'm like, okay, how do I respond in light of what happened, in light of the story of God? It's what I would say. It becomes just this govern, a compass, where I'm not, because sometimes I can change the script.
Yeah, yeah.
When things happen, right? I can just kind of like, boom, because I get emotionally charged, if that's particularly how I'm wired. And to root myself in there, I think, is to say, okay, I want this to govern my response.
I love that picture, because when everything is no big deal, when it's just Tuesday, and we all do have different scripts, and all of a sudden and that could be global, national, personal. It's not happens in our marriages. You're like, wait a second, what are you reading off of? And you realize all those unsaid things show up. I think
it's like the common vernacular. You do you.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine on a Tuesday. You do you. I'm going to do me. But when something happens, like you doing you bothers me.
Yeah. It at least reveals that everything isn't as subjective as we say it is. We still got to figure out what that looks like. What's the whatever. but we can say everything's subjective until those things.
Yeah.
I think of this first. I've been thinking about this of so much of what shows up in our reactions in our close relationships, our reactions and responses to pain, to tragedy, to misfortune, or to joy, reveals something. There's so much in Genesis 1. A couple weeks ago, I preached about just the Garden of Eden and how is this. There's something in all of us that we long for stuff, and we all have our own versions of it, but we long for everything to be made right. We long for everything to make sense. We long for this kind of utopia, which is rooted in our hearts. Ecclesiastes tells us that. And I think we're all looking for that in our own stories. And I think of coming back to how you said we got to root ourselves in the right place for these all make sense. Today, you were talking about image of God. And you're talking about how, which I think was great. I think it pushed on. I don't know if there's a person in the room that it didn't push on. The Dan Gregory way. Someone walked out and said, "You guys always give him the hard ones." So he always has a way of dialing it up. He has a way of, he's like, "Let's talk about all of it today." But it's important stuff because all of those for all of us, and it may look different, political stories, relational stories, moral stories, our own personal experiences kind of have these threads that if we keep looking a layer deeper, maybe that's a better analogy, if we keep going deeper, where did this story come from? We talked about this last time, that our stories can come from our pain. Sometimes we're just handed stories. This is the culture I grew up in. This is the parents I had. This is the situation I was born into. And some of those walls we hit reveal those different layers of those stories. And so I think of when you talk about image of God in some of those quote unquote hot topics, everything from personal struggles to pornography to social things like racism to issues like abortion and transgender identity. I mean, we talked about everything because they're all rooted. The image of God paints all of those things. How do you see, if we get our story off, how do those kind of influence our reactions to how we see all those things? Because they can feel like issues or they can feel like parts of our story. But how do you see the image of God influencing the way that we see all of those practically and the way that we interact in light of those things? Because all day long, people have different perspectives on how those things should be handled or what those things are. How do you see image of God influencing all those different things?
Yeah, I think the main thing that comes to my mind when you ask that, and I think we do this all the time, is we dehumanize it. They become hot topics, and so they become convictions, positions we hold, and so what I think is the early church in the Greco-Roman world. We said this morning, and somebody this was a quote from somebody. I have no idea who, and I don't know how they quoted it, but here's the gist of it: that when the world dehumanizes, the church comes in and rehumanizes.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think that's where we get off track, because when it just becomes an issue, then what we're going to do is start yelling at other people that they're not on board with our issue. And as right as that issue may be biblically, we miss the point. There's a human on the other side of that. Yeah. And there's somebody from the image of God. And I often think this, Aiden, to look at people I disagree with and to look in their eyes and realize there's somebody created in the image of God, made on purpose by God. I think about this. What would it be like for me to build a relationship with somebody that's not like me? Racially not like me? Maybe they grew up socioeconomically not right. What would it be like for me to build a relationship? What it does, or maybe it's somebody who holds a different position than me. Yeah. Or maybe it's somebody who's not a Christian. And then all of a sudden you realize the issues that become easy to talk about behind a glass screen or back here and have opinions about, that these are human beings. And as wrong as I may think they are, even biblically, when I meet with them and talk with them, I realize they're human. Yeah. They're made in the image of God. And I think what happens when we lose our bearings, and particularly followers of Christ, when we don't realize that I want to point my life to Christ so that I conform to his image, I stop reflecting the heart of a God who ran towards humans, who turned their back on it. He ran towards them. That's the gospel. And I stop running towards human beings, and I start running away from them, and then I create fences, and I stand on soapboxes, and I think we can hold strongly to our convictions. Yeah. As we run towards human beings.
Yeah, because I think what might be the straw man in our heads is, yeah, but if we just love people, are you just saying love people, Dan? You know, just love people, and because we can feel like there's a tension. How do I hold a conviction? How do I have a conviction, and at the same time love people? Because it feels, and I've had conversations with people that might be here, and they have church hurt or a bad experience, or they're disenfranchised with the way the church is, and so the only other option they have is to go here. You know, well, I used to believe this, but now I just believe this because I was hurt, or because the church looked faulty, or whatever it is. You know, it can be easy just to do these polls versus that tension. I don't think we have a good. What would maybe be your pastoral advice if you're sitting with somebody in your office? This is your office. Your office would be mine.
We'll be cleaning things up.
It's an aesthetic here, Dan. But if you had someone in your office, because I think that pastoral edge is what I feel passionate about, because it's so easy. It's easy for my own heart to go from here to be like, you know what, fine, poof, and here. Jesus came full of grace and truth. Sought people. The smallest letter of the law was not diminished in the life of Christ. What would be your pastoral advice to anybody listening on how we hold convictions, pursue the image of God in people? We don't get loose with our theology or belief, yet we hold people to the highest esteem. What might be a practical thing or two that comes to your mind to train our hearts towards that Christ-like nature of living in grace and truth?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I'll take a shot at it. I'll give you opinion.
Yeah, I did not send these to you beforehand.
Yeah, no, you hit me with them.
This
first,
is us musing in the afternoon.
Which we do, and I enjoy doing this. Like, so I think this is every day.
Yeah.
You know, that people want to know this. Like, I have a child who, and so I feel like for me to love them, I gotta, whatever, or a friend that, and whatever the issue is, and I want to be careful, but like whatever that is, you name it. I think this one, to totally swing the pendulum over here and said, let's just love them, and therefore throw any convictions out the window. I believe is not really love.
Sure.
Right? Because if those convictions are rooted in the story of God and the revelation of God, then the God who is love revealed this to us. And the most loving thing that I can do is hold on to the convictions of a God who is love. I think the problem is that the way I hold on to them becomes defensive. I have never seen, this is just me, and I'm not saying there isn't anybody fought into the kingdom. I'm going to fight you on this issue into the kingdom. But I think you can love people into the kingdom, and I think you can tell somebody, I love you, and disagree with you. I realize that at some point that may cause a breach. I get that. I say to the team here, and it's not original with me, and I don't remember who said it to me way back when, but I say love them, lead them, love them.
Yeah.
The reason we say love them twice is I would never want anybody to leave because they didn't feel loved.
Yeah.
But they might not want to go where we're leading.
Sure.
And it's like, that's okay. But I love you. And so I can hug you and love you. I think the danger becomes when holding on to my conviction is a fight, and I'm going to yell my point at you. I'm going to make a point. Or when loving you is like, I'm just going to give up my conviction. But I think Jesus ran into it. He was not afraid of any. He didn't run away from it. I think we're afraid of people who disagree with us.
I was going to say, I think sometimes that is underneath, whether it's someone who doesn't like conflict. I've met people like that.
Yeah, there's a backstory there.
But sometimes because you're like, oh, I'm scared to rock the boat.
Yeah.
Or sometimes we could be scared of that person might have somewhat of a valid opinion, and I don't want my worldview to be shaken because I'm not super confident in the story of God yet. You know what I mean? Because I have a flimsy understanding. But I think fear for a lot of men, I think fear shows up as like anger. Yep. Like when we get scared or anxious, like rah, 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 and that can
so true
because there's something that feels like it's getting shaken, and so sometimes that response can reveal a fear within me. And time again through Scripture it says, "Fear not." Mm-hmm. This story is bigger than we are. Mm-hmm. If this thing shakes, and I think fear. As you were talking, I agree with that. I think fear is is a layer underneath of all of our reactions that we have to be wary of.
Yeah, I there's a part, Aiden. I don't want to go a different route than.
That's what a podcast for, Pastor.
Yeah, I think when we don't root ourselves in the story of God, sometimes we can think we are God, and that we have to control the situation, and everybody's got to see it. And the truth is, I need to reflect the heart of God. Well, I'm not God.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we're afraid, particularly if it's our kids, our family, and they're going this direction.
Yeah.
And it's like we get afraid. And so it causes us to do crazy things like maybe alienate them with our anger or just acquiesce and say, okay, God must think that too, because I don't want you to be upset at me. And my fear, I want to be able to, right? And I get that. Like,
yeah, that's a very natural.
it's a real human feeling. It's like, but the truth is, as I point my life to Christ and allow Him to conform me to His image, I love the fact that the description of Him that you mentioned, He was full of grace and full of truth. And I don't think the two are. I think that the two come together in one person, Christ. And the more I conform to His image, the more they come together towards me. And so here, I told you this earlier today. I feel deeply burdened in our particular cultural moment. I feel more convicted and convinced of the story of God and the truth of God. I feel more so, and more so heartbroken. And I think those two things can go together. Like, in fact, I get nervous if the deeper my conviction goes, the more my heart doesn't break.
Yeah, that's a good litmus test for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of the deeper my conviction goes, the more my anger rears, the more my heart breaks. Jesus, as we were talking in the hallway earlier, He looked at the crowds. They were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Yeah. And He said, pray therefore the Lord of the harvest that He will send forth laborers into the harvest, right? It wasn't like, hey, He said, let's go. Right? They're harassed. In fact, in Luke, it says He actually wept over the city. And so I think that's a good litmus test. Yeah. Image bearing roots me in that. These are human beings. These are people for whom Christ died. Yeah. Yeah. And the more my convictions root in the story of God, unwaveringly, the more my heart breaks for people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's some of the things I've picked up from you, even probably Pastor Bob and just other leaders working over the last years in ministry, is even just you said the rehumanizing. Something in learning, like we all said we believe different stories, live in the different stories, but it doesn't mean all of our stories are invalid. Like hearing someone's story shines a lot of light, humanizes people. And you're great at this, asking questions to people that we'd understand why. Help me understand why that strikes a chord with you. Why does that frustrate you so much? Why does that make you so angry? Can you tell me the story and where that might be coming from? And it rehumanizes people, you know, and those things. I think of it's easy in our digital age to allow, and I think internet's a tool, all that thing, but it's easy to disembody relationships. It's just easy. Like we can all say like the screen warriors, those types of things, but just us in general, people that we know, but I only see in passing at church and see mostly online or whatever, they can be disembodied from an actual person. And I think the evil one can distort that in our hearts. They're like, oh, that's just a character than an actual person. And it can be easy to do that with groups of people. It'd be easy to do that with individual people. It'd be easy to do that with the people in our lives. That something about just sitting down and talking to people, like finding yourself in spaces with people where you're rehumanizing people, you're hearing their stories, sitting in the BMV and just seeing it's not a lot of seeing the image of God in the BMV.
And it just isn't hot topic issues, right? I mean, I love sometimes it'd be a different generation. You sit with we can clump groups and generations of people together, sit with an older person and ask them a few questions, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow. Or a younger person. Yeah. And it's like, oh, those. What are you, millennials? Are you a millennial?
I'm a millennial, yeah.
Those millennials, it's easy just
the real generation
to label people with groups.
Yeah.
But you see them like, oh, wow. It rehumanizes them when you run into that opportunity, hear their story, ask a few questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something that have a meeting with somebody, a couple or something. I don't know who they are, and so you're kind of like, I wonder who they are. I wonder if the problem is. I wonder if they're mad at me about something. I wonder if they have a problem I don't know how to solve. You're not sure, and then you meet them, and you're like, oh wow. And you hear where they're from, you hear what they're wrestling with, you hear what they're excited for, and all of a sudden you're like, this goes from an abstract concept to saying what you were saying earlier about the image of God and the message to this reality on how we interact with people. We could talk about this all day.
We could
talk about this all day, but we've got a service here in a couple
we do,
minutes.
don't we?
But we'll be back. Might be a week, might be 2 weeks
When we find each other.
when we find each other again. Good talking with you.
All right.